Hello and welcome to the GOAL podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett, across the table from Jeff. How's it going?
What's going on?
How you enjoying your August?
I'm ready for September.
You ready for it not to be August anymore?
Weather-wise and hunting season's starting to come around. So.
Oh, yeah. You start getting like antsy and start looking at the calendar a little more often.
Yeah.
It's like, do I have all my paperwork set to go? Am I really ready? Am I good to go? Yeah, it was good. Good. We're at Bill's house over the weekend.
Yeah, what a barbecue.
That was awesome. That
puts anything that I've ever grilled to shame.
So Bill's son, Alex, his birthday, really cool. Good to see him. Good to see Bill and the family. Thank you for inviting us. It was really cool to see everybody. And the food was amazing.
Yeah, happy birthday to him. Glad to see him doing well. And here's to another year.
Really cool. In GOAL news, there's a piece that's just now getting updated because there's an update to it. It's going to the Supreme Judicial Court. This is Westbrook versus Holyoke, or Westbrook v. Pratt, I think, or the other way around. I forget exactly. But this is a case that GOAL is funding because it applies to all of us. This is a suitability case. So a couple of years ago, a Mr. Randy Westbrook applies for an LTC. The Holyoke Police Department chief, David Pratt, denies the application, saying the guy is unsuitable under MGL 140, section 131 or whatever, which, they say grants licensing authorities discretion based on whether or not the applicant, quote, may create a risk to public safety. The denial cited, past criminal incidents, including some continuations without finding on various things, which it's important to note are not convictions. So Mr. Westbrook sued, asserting that this suitability standard is unconstitutionally vague and overly discretionary, especially under the Supreme Court's decision in NYSRPA v. Bruin, if you remember that from 2022. Bruin mandates that restrictions on the Second Amendment must align with, text history and tradition. Very narrow objective standards. In May 2024, Judge William P. Hadley agreed with Westbrook. He held that while the state has a tradition of disarming dangerous persons, the unsuitability standard based, just on what suggests potential danger, it's too vague, it's too overbroad, and it gives licensing authorities too much discretion. The judge reversed the denial and ordered Holyoke to issue Westbrook's LTC.
Well, that doesn't stop the Commonwealth from fighting that tooth and nail.
Never.
The Commonwealth appealed, and in May 2025, the Superior Court Judge Shukla upheld the suitability standard as constitutional. Her ruling emphasized that Bruin does not completely strip away discretion in licensing, citing pre-Bruin Massachusetts decisions, such as Holden and the SJC's recent Marquis decision on non-resident licensing. So if you remember, Marquis and Donnell, in March 2025, the Supreme Judicial Court resolved the two cases which reaffirmed the constitutionality of Massachusetts suitability requirements, something we all adamantly disagree with.
Oh, yeah, and so does the Constitution of the Supreme Court, but that doesn't stop Massachusetts. They still want to argue about it.
Those rulings upheld that the statute now mandates the licensing authority to issue a license unless the applicant is prohibited or determined unsuitable based on credible and articulable information indicating potential danger.
So where are we next? Just recently, I think this week, the Supreme Judicial Court has agreed to hear the case. So the last step was a Superior Court decision favoring the Commonwealth. Gun Owners Action League stepped up to fund Mr. Westbrook's case. And we're heading for the SJC. The key legal question there is going to be whether or not Massachusetts, quote, suitability licensing standard, meaning whatever the police chief feels like in the moment, is narrow and objective enough to satisfy Bruin's historical tradition framework. I argue that it is not. You cannot have a public figure who just decides that this guy is not suitable to be able to exercise a constitutional right.
Yeah,
we have
ton
laws.
of constitutional questions in there.
Yeah, that's the primary one, but there's a number of them.
From the big picture constitutionality question is, does an executive branch official, which law enforcement falls under the execution of the laws, it's under the umbrella of an executive, do they have the unilateral authority to take away your rights because they want to? Or should they have to go through some sort of judicial process where you actually have, that magic word that everybody seems to like now is due process.
Right.
Where you actually get to argue your position.
Yeah, and you get to defend yourself in court. I mean, there is a system in place by which you can deny somebody their constitutional rights. It's called taking them to court, convicting them of crimes. And you do it that way. You don't, what other right exists? I mean, we've said this 100 times. What other right exists that's enumerated where a public official just has the power to say, no, you don't actually get that one?
Not unless you pay the man first.
Well, yeah, right. You got to pay the VIG. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure, because it does, it's one of those kind of potentially landmark cases that GOAL picks up and helps out with, because it's a precedent setter and it has obvious application to the rest of us in, our suitability standards when it comes to getting LTC. So hopefully it goes our way. We'll keep an eye on it. I imagine we'll have Jim on here at some point to talk about it. In the meantime, a little bit of sad news from the firearms world.
We're saddened to share the news of the passing of David Allen, known as Super Dave Harrington.
Super Dave.
He's just a legend in the firearms community. He was known as a very well-respected trainer across the country, and his life it's a testament to service, skill, and the pursuit of excellence. So Dave served in both the U.S. Navy and U.S. Army, including with the Army Special Forces over a 20-year military career. He earned numerous honors, among them the Meritorious Service Medal, Expert Infantryman Badge, Master Parachutist Badge. He had airborne wings from the Royal Thai Army and multiple Special Forces and intelligence commendations. But his service to the country didn't end with that. In the decades that followed, Dave dedicated himself to preserving and teaching the values of the Second Amendment as a hunter, competitive shooter, and as a highly sought-after firearms instructor. His students remember him for his thoughtful intensity. One of the quotes of a clip that I saw from him, he said, "One of the most important things that is my direct responsibility is to instill the desire in the individual to want to be better. If you don't want it, there's no amount of instruction or work that's going to make you better."
Absolutely.
So I never personally had the privilege of meeting or training under Dave, but when I asked our mutual friend Ben DeWalt from Onsite Firearms Training about him, Ben shared one of Dave's favorite lines: "Do the right thing at the right time every time." And Ben told me that to him, those words say a lot, not just for shooting, but for life itself. In the end, Super Dave Harrington gave us more than a list of achievements. He left behind a legacy, and he showed us that excellence doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of choices we make every day. And while he may be gone, the lessons he taught, the lives he touched, and the standards he set will keep pushing us forward. So his path is there for us to follow. All we have to do is choose to walk it.
There's an NRA event, Friends of the NRA event coming up in October. So join up the Friends of the NRA on Friday, October the 24th from 5 to 10 p.m. at the John P. McKeon AmVets Post, number 146. This is in Dorchester at 4 Hilltop Street. It's an evening of dinner, games, auctions, exclusive prizes, including NRA firearms, gear, and collectibles. This is a NAGA event, NAAGA, National African American Gun Association, Nolan Howard's group. Great guy, great bunch of people. This event invites guests to embrace the Halloween spirit with pro Second Amendment costumes. The best dressed will win a special prize. So check out friendsofnra.org. Talk to Nolan himself. He's the president of NAGA New England. FFL transfers for the evening will be done via Cape Gunworks. So get your tickets. Don't miss out. Look forward to checking that out. Should be a good night.
So, bit of a development in the case of Road v. Bonta. That's out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
West Coast, yeah, Ninth Circuit.
California has asked the Ninth Circuit for an en banc review.
No.
In Road v. Bonta, the case where the court found the state's requirement for a background check every time an already licensed firearms owner buys ammunition to be facially unconstitutional. The court has ordered the plaintiffs, Road, to respond by the end of the month with a limit of 15 pages or 4,200 words to the state's request.
So we talked about this episode or two ago. This went to our buddy St. Benitez, and they found in our favor. So naturally, California says, no, we can't have that. Following the Constitution? No, let's get an en banc review, which means they want the entire panel the entire court to weigh in on it. En banc reviews are pretty rare, granted on only about 1 to 1.5% of requests. Oddly enough, happens a lot in the gun world.
Imagine that.
In California, however, it's become almost routine. Whenever state firearm law is struck down, the state requests and then receives this otherwise pretty exceptionally rare review.
Yeah, it seems every time a Ninth Circuit judge dares to side with liberty, limit state power, or uphold the right to defend yourself, California demands a redo again and again until it wins.
Yeah.
It's rock, paper, scissors with a sword toddler loser. And it's
we don't like that outcome. Do it again.
Best 2 out of 3, then 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7 until this isn't fair and we need to compromise. And in government speak, compromise always means we, the people, surrender our enumerated rights to whatever authority the state decides to claim, consent being optional.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. They don't like the answer, so do it again until we get an answer that we like.
But yeah, Rhodes on the clock to respond by the end of the month. We'll see. I'm sure they're going to file a response.
They will absolutely file a response. And if you asked me to cast the tea leaves right now, I'd say that en banc review is going to find in favor of the state of California.
Yeah, I'd love to see the Vegas odds on this one.
Let's see. So the Kyle Collada case is developing just a little bit.
Well, I saw this story, and this came out right after, and we had mentioned it when we were speaking with Jim.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a little bit more detail on the couple of cases that we mentioned where people did actually receive bond. So after Kyle got arrested, he's still sitting in jail, by the way.
Yeah. As of this recording, he's still cooling his heels.
In Worcester.
Without bond, yeah.
2 men, both foreign nationals living illegally in Massachusetts, pled not guilty in separate firearms trafficking cases. So first, a 25-year-old Patrick de Oliveira is charged with dealing firearms without a license and conspiracy to deal firearms without a license. Prosecutors allege he sold a pistol and a shotgun to an informant outside of a Framingham hotel in September of 2024 for a total of $3,500. He also later offered to sell more firearms after allegedly driving to South Carolina to buy the firearms for resale in Massachusetts.
Okay, stop there. So this guy is in the country illegally. He is illegally possessing, trafficking, selling firearms, which is
it's a federal felony.
Textbook federal felony. This is what you talk about when you're talking about straw purchases and so all of those things. So this is what people horn in on. This guy must be sitting in jail right now, right?
He is out on $10,000 bond.
He's out on bond.
Ordered to stay and maintain employment in the state with a court date set for September 28th.
Oh, so he's not in jail?
No.
But Kyle Collada is.
In fact, he's required to stay gainfully employed and keep earning money. The second case involves 31-year-old Guillermo Fernandez Tavares, charged with dealing firearms without a license. Authorities say he sold 11 firearms and ammunition across 10 different states, including so-called ghost guns. Those are privately manufactured firearms without serial numbers, firearms with obliterated serial numbers, and a large capacity magazine. A package containing a firearm sent to him from Florida was intercepted before delivery, containing yet another firearm.
Wait. So he's selling firearms illegally possessing, selling guns interstate across state lines and dealing in obliterated serial numbers,
and
which is
put the air quotes around
list.
It. Ghost.
Ooh, yeah, scary ghost guns. He must be sitting in jail.
He is also out on $10,000 bond, pending a September 8th court date.
So he's not sitting in jail either.
No, both men are accused of trafficking firearms, some tied to transnational criminal organizations and local street gangs. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, they were part of a year-long investigation that led to a total of 18 arrests, all involving individuals unlawfully in the United States, all charged with firearms trafficking. Despite
the gang ties, trafficking allegations, despite being near perfect exemplars of the crime guns and the so-called ghost guns that lawmakers keep waving in everybody's faces and swear that this is the reason to pass, Chapter 135. These defendants are neither flight risks or threats to public safety, and they were released on bond. Meanwhile, Kyle Culata, Arizona veteran, Air Force veteran, no criminal record, no criminal ties, is being held without bail. He's being smeared as a flight risk and a danger to society for nothing more than possessing his own legally owned firearm in the wrong state without the wrong piece of paper.
That contrast between Kyle's case and these other cases absolutely rips the mask off the narrative. So this was never about stopping criminals. It's about a raw, just burning, pathological, perverse obsession gun control zealots have with controlling peaceful citizens. They know criminals, especially real predators, won't listen and don't care, and that lack of control is scary to them. So they aim their sanctimonious outrage at the people they think will be most likely to obey their bullying and give them that illusion to satisfy their craving for a feeling of control. It's a purely Orwellian delusion, and their big brother gun control creed seems to be punish the lawful, control is safety, and submission is freedom.
It's kind of sickening how routine this has become. People who are not the problem, they get, drenched in vitriol, while predators who prey on the innocent are met with, courtesies and excuses. And we, the gun owners, we're the ones that are told that we have to surrender our rights and surrender the tools that keep us safe. So you should ask yourself, who's the bigger threat here? Is it the wolves at the door, or is it the shepherds who willingly throw a sheep to the wolves to keep the flock compliant? So the latest stuff in the P320, it's like every time we turn around, there's a development.
It's coming in hot.
It's continuing. It's getting deeper. More organizations are jumping on the, I don't want to say bandwagon because I don't think that's what it is, but more organizations are issuing bans on the platform. IDPA now has announced on its website that it's immediately prohibiting the use of all variants of the P320 in any IDPA competition or event, citing, quote, numerous reports and videos, close quote. Their statement emphasized that safety comes first and said the decision may be reevaluated if new credible information emerges. All other SIG Sauer models remain permitted in their appropriate divisions. So they're targeting the P320.
Yeah, the U.S. Marshal Service also has reportedly, I haven't seen an official statement from them, issued a memorandum banning the 320, including its variants for official use or carried by its personnel. Law enforcement agencies have implemented similar measures. For example, recently the Houston Police Department gave officers 2 months to replace any P320s in service after an officer was injured by an alleged uncommanded discharge while directing traffic for a parade.
So last time on this podcast, we talked about the Air Force airmen.
There's been developments in that too.
There's a development there. The U.S. Air Force investigation into that fatal discharge has led to the arrest of an unidentified individual, another airman. That individual has been charged with making a false official statement, also obstruction of justice, and importantly, involuntary manslaughter. So this one raised my eyebrows. A spokesperson stressed that the accused is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Of course, it's important to note involuntary manslaughter under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, is the unintentional killing of another person caused by culpable negligence or during the commission of certain offenses. There's no intent to kill, but rather a reckless disregard for the safety and foreseeable consequences to others. So,
yeah, there are some people that are saying, "Oh, this exonerates the 320 for everything ever," and there are people that say it could mean the exact opposite, and that someone should have known this was so dangerous, and that's the part. So
there's a
broad spectrum.
Everybody's using it to reinforce their priors, right? The people that want to come to the defense of the P320 sees it as vindication. Likewise, the other side. So what it does do in my mind is it just throws a wrinkle in there, because now it apparently, given the little bit of information that we have, it takes the gun out of the deceased airman's hands, and it apparently puts it under the control of someone else.
Well, we'll have to see. The devil's going to be in the details on that and exactly what they mean with those charges.
And we may or may not ever get, total detail on there. This is a military investigation. So, but it's a wrinkle. It's a wrinkle. It could go either way.
Yeah, but SIG's staying measured. The company previously claimed the P320 cannot discharge without a trigger pull, and that is a fact. It now asserts something slightly different. It says the pistol cannot fire without the trigger first being moved to the rear. Interesting change of phrase that a lot of people have picked up on. SIG continues to describe the P320 as one of the safest, most advanced pistols in the world, and has directed consumers to animations explaining its operation. Yeah. The company asks anyone affected by bans to contact their customer service folks for clarification, and stresses safe handling practices, citing its manual's bold warning. It says the most effective safety is to carry your pistol without a round in the chamber and to load a round only when ready to fire.
Wah, wah.
So this recommendation, it's something they changed across all their manuals. But whether or not it's related to the P320, I don't know. Timing never looks great. But this recommendation added in the last year or two has drawn criticism for seemingly limiting the pistol's practicality as a duty or self-defense firearm. So,
it's not a great look.
You don't warn people to not wear their seatbelts until they intend to crash.
Right. If SIG's position is correct, that incidents stem solely from user error or faulty holsters, like they were saying, where are the equivalent uncommanded discharges among other widely owned semi-automatic pistols? Why just the P320? Unofficial estimates suggest over 2.5 million P320s are in circulation in the United States, alongside more than 2 million P365s. There's 3 million Smith & Wesson M&P Shields and tens of millions of other models from Glock, Walter Ruger, Springfield, FN, and H&K. If the issue were purely user error, similar incidents should be expected across these other platforms. Otherwise, the implication is that the P320 is uniquely prone to such events or uniquely carried by unsafe users. So which is it?
Well, so recently, and this is within the last few days, the date of this recording, Ryan Kleckner, who has done work for NSSF, and he's been around in the firearms world plenty, posted a short 3-part video series via the YouTube channel Gun University. He spoke about a potential safety issue with his personal P320 Spectre. In his test, the pistol could fire under certain conditions, like without a trigger reset, simply by manipulating the slide while holding the trigger to the rear. He also demonstrated that slide movement alone could release the sear. It appears to be consistent with other recent reports and videos of the P320s discharging from the slide being manipulated.
Yeah.
In the video, Kleckner said Sig Sauer's VP, Phil Strader, whom he knew from previous times working together, industry friends, reached out to him directly and said he knew the cause of the issue with Kleckner's pistol, as Strader had experienced it before on one of his pistols. The cause was incorrect reassembly. According to SIG's manual, after putting the slide back onto the frame rails, the slide must be locked to the rear with the slide stop before rotating the takedown lever back into place.
I'm sure nobody actually does that.
Kleckner admitted he had instead held the slide back manually while turning the takedown lever to its locked position.
Okay.
That small deviation apparently can, though not always, create a dangerous condition where the pistol can fire when it otherwise shouldn't. So Kleckner tested both methods. The correct assembly procedure seemed to function properly, while the incorrect method occasionally replicated the unsafe conditions.
Wow.
The problem is that it's not visible from the outside, and the gun otherwise appears to function as normal. You can put in a magazine, chamber around, and work with it. But this condition exists, which to me actually could explain why this subtle change in assembly procedure, this little error, might maybe contribute to the P320's seemingly disproportionate number of uncommanded discharges. So from the factory, where they're doing everything procedurally by the book, of course they don't have problems. But out in the reality of everyday people field stripping and putting guns back together, you don't know.
Still have to design around that, though. That's not, it's a slight enough deviation in the procedure that you can still tell people, listen, you have to do it by the book, but you still, it's a safety thing, and you have to design around it.
Well, what concerns me is if this truly turns out to be a contributing factor, to be a cause, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around for something so simple yet so consequential to have slipped past engineers, testers for this long.
Yeah, that's
would be pretty inconceivable. Worse still is the dismissing and denigrating customers who raise concerns. In matters of safety, we often talk about the difference between ignorance and carelessness. If this turns out to be, the for lack of a better term, smoking gun that creates the condition, if we find out that anyone at SIG knew about this, that the pistol could be assembled incorrectly into an unsafe condition while still appearing fully functional, that's pretty jaw-dropping.
To me, that's kind of the main point. It's not that, yes, it's pretty damning if this is true, but it's equally damning, if not more so, that Strader knew about it. It's like, oh yeah, I know what the problem is.
Yeah, at that point, you're not talking about a mechanical flaw. You're talking about
it's organizational,
like a first ballot Hall of Fame abdication of responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's not just costing money or PR points. That one really puts people at risk. So
yeah,
it seems so far that is the most plausible explanation I have seen as to how this could happen, how SIG could have firearms that they cannot replicate the issues, how other people can replicate the issues, and how a little step could be missed by people.
That's like a nothing, man. Wow. That's big. That could be a real thing.
That is certainly going to raise some questions.
It's like, how when you buy a new car and when you're going to shift gears, they say, well, you have to push the button first and then slide it into gear. And, but people go, no, and they just kind of flip it into the next gear. It's just one of those things that you do. It's not by the book, but if doing that caused your freaking engine to explode and your car to run off of the road, you would expect them to
maybe they tell you.
Yeah, they would say something and design around it maybe,
We'll see. It is on the, I guess, at this point, the cutting edge of speculation and tea leaf reading for whatever's really going on with the SIG P320.
We're not going to know until it finally gets,
over all the time, this is actually the first explanation I've seen that seems rather plausible.
It seems plausible. I'm going to have to look at the animations again and see if I can make heads or tails of what they're talking about there. But interesting.
All right, so as we've been going through the history of American service rifles, we're still in the early 1800s. There's been a lot of guns.
I was a kid, yeah.
But with this episode, we're talking about the model 1814 through 1817, what was known as the common rifle.
Yeah.
In the world of American military firearms, there are the icons that everybody knows that have the name recognition. Mm-hmm. Your Springfield 1903, M1 Garand, M16, a modern M4. But before the giants, before repeating rifles of the Civil War, even before percussion caps of the mid-1800s, there was a bit of an unsung workhorse that bridged the gap between the muskets of the Revolution and the rifles of a more modern battlefield. So it was called the common rifle, the model 1814, and its successor, the model 1817. And while the name kind of makes it sound plain, it played a rather important role in American arms. So
it's like that too. It's a model 1903.
In the early 19th century, the U.S. military still existed on these crossroads. So during the War of 1812, American riflemen had proven the accuracy and long-range performance of rifled arms did better than smoothbore muskets. The Pennsylvania and Kentucky rifles were descendants of European lineage and could hit targets far beyond the effective reach of musket fire. But the U.S. Army needed something else, and they needed a standardized government issue rifle that could be produced in quantity, still pushing down that line. And the first attempt really pushed in 1814 as the Ordnance Department contracted with private manufacturers like Henry Derringer in Philadelphia, Johnson in Connecticut, and others to produce what became known as the Model 1814. So the design drew from the earlier Harper's Ferry 1803, but it started to add, it just evolved and added more refinements. So there was a heavier 54 caliber barrel, full length stock, brass furniture. The Army called it common, not because it was ordinary, but because it was intended and designed as a standardized pattern, sort of one rifle to replace the ongoing patchwork of state and militia arms.
So just a few years later, the Army issued a refined version called the Model 1817. Still 54 caliber, still a flintlock, still a single shot muzzleloader, but had a couple of subtle changes: a longer barrel for greater sight radius, an iron ramrod instead of the wood for durability, and simplified fittings to make it easier and cheaper to produce. More importantly, it was contracted out to multiple manufacturers, such as Derringer, again, as well as Nathan Starr, Simeon North, who developed one of America's first milling machines, and others, setting a precedent for how the U.S. would arm itself in the future. Multiple contractors, one standardized pattern. So in a matter of 50 years, we've gone from kind of bespoke firearms produced by individuals to interchangeable arms produced by anybody with the means to hit the specifications. As long as they got machines, they can build the rifle. Perhaps you could argue that this is the birth of the military-industrial complex.
A little bit.
Well, maybe.
I mean, these rifles were still issued to specialized rifle companies, not necessarily all rank-and-file infantry, who still carried smoothbore muskets. But the rifleman's role as scouts, skirmishers, and marksmen was increasing, and the common rifle was their tool. If you picked up a Model 1817 today, its lineage is obvious. Yes, it's a flintlock muzzleloader, but you're starting to see some of the DNA of modern rifles. The concept of a standardized military pattern built to a specification by multiple contractors. It's a direct ancestor to the way M1 Garands were made by Springfield and Winchester, or M16s made by Colt and FN. Its rifled barrel solidified the expectation that a military long arm should be accurate at distance, not just mass volley fire. And that expectation never really went away. It also used interchangeable parts, which, albeit limited at the time but growing, was another step in that march towards full interchangeability, and existed as a cornerstone of American industrial arms production. Even the iron ramrod, replacing the break-prone wooden ones, reflected the same principle that drives modern military arms development. Make it durable, make it reliable, and make it soldier-proof.
So the common rifle served quietly but effectively in the 1820s and 1830s, including frontier garrisons and during conflicts with Native American tribes. A lot of them were later converted from flintlock to percussion cap in the 1840s, extending their service life into the Mexican-American War. By the 1850s, however, technology had started to outpace the common rifle. The U.S. was moving towards the 58 caliber rifled musket with the mini ball, a firearm that could be issued to every soldier, not just specialized riflemen. And I'm sure we'll talk about this style of ammunition as we get a little further along. But the common rifle had already served its purpose in history. It proved that the Army could standardize the rifled arm, contract it out to multiple manufacturers, and then issue it on a meaningful scale. When you strip away the centuries, the Model 1817's influence is still visible in every U.S. service rifle that followed after. Standardization across multiple contractors, accuracy is a baseline requirement, and durability through material improvement. Swapping wood for iron in 1817 was no different in principle than swapping steel for polymer in the 21st century.
And, maybe most important, the common rifle marked a cultural shift inside the Ordnance Department. It signaled that rifles that were once considered a niche specialist tool would become the standard. That vision wouldn't be, fully realized until maybe a century later, but that seed was planted with the 1814 and 1817. And those common rifles are kind of rarely remembered outside of collector circles when people think about the totality of American rifles. They never fought a defining battle or were the star of, some military propaganda campaign, but they were some of the first truly standardized U.S. military rifles and key to the bridge from the handcrafted long rifles of the Revolution to the industrial age service rifles of the Civil War and beyond. And in their own utilitarian way, they carried the DNA of every American service rifle to come. So from the fields of the early Republic to the polymer and optics of today, that lineage exists. And that's the legacy of the common rifle. And it's also probably a good moment to, as we're doing this walk through history, to stop and talk about what people really mean when they talk about military style firearms. In the 1800s, the United States saw a huge boom in factory production as part of the Industrial Revolution. And that shift made it possible to build large volumes of high quality products at a fraction of the previous cost. And of course, the military is not going to ignore that any more than the commercial market is. So if you're outfitting an army and you want inexpensive, reliable, durable equipment that's so well made, the limiting factor in its performance is the skill of the person using it, it's when the military starts producing gear like that. It's only natural that citizens and everybody else would want the same thing, because who wouldn't prefer their product to be more durable, more reliable, and more affordable? Show me any industry where that combination was unsuccessful.
Government-funded military research has a long history of producing technologies that spill over into civilian life, right? Military style, quote unquote, technology already dominates our everyday world. Satellite communications, GPS, the internet, nuclear power, airport radar, antibiotics, microwaves, duct tape, trauma care, prosthetics, and the list goes on. Jets, cell phones, EpiPens, even the night vision in your Ring doorbell. Yeah, every one of these came to the public because it has its roots as a military technology. So to claim that firearms should be the one area where military influence is somehow unacceptable, it's not just inconsistent, it's absurd. In every other aspect of our lives, military innovation has made countless civilian products better, safer, more accessible. Firearms are no exception. They're no different. The idea that, quote, military style should be a negative is not the norm. It's the exception.
Yeah, if military style, and you put the air quotes around it, if that's good enough to guide planes, save lives, connect the world, then it's more than good enough for the citizens whose rights pre-exist the government that grants itself the authority to use violence against those citizens. So whether it's muskets or microchips, military technology has always shaped the tools of a free American people. And to carve out firearms as like the one verboten exception would break with every lesson history has taught us. And the reality is those who forget the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it.
So that is going to do it for today. Thank you for listening in. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show. Share it with friends. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/GOAL-podcastMA, on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Menu button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.